Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim SWARTZ.
Tim SWARTZ to Mr. UFO. Tim SWARTZ to Mr. UFO. Prepare for landing on the KCOR saucer pad.
Already, time sure flies when you listen to the impact. Their music is so good. It is possible they had assistance from extraterrestrials.
Well, ancient astronaut theorists respond with a resounding yes, Tim.
Well, of course. They always do, don't they? Here we are back in Vegas with Tina, and we're like, oh my goodness, that's the KCOR launch pad right there. So we're back on Earth after swirling through the galaxy once again. Tim, how are you? That was real zero gravity up there, wasn't it?
Yes, but it's always nice to be back on good old terra firma.
Terra firma, boy, nothing like it. Unless you hang out on the weekend at the planet Eros, which is where I'm from, actually. I find it's a very blue planet. And I do like red, white, and blue, I guess. Whatever I'm supposed to say. All right. Anyway, enough of this kibitzing. I'm sure by now our listeners want us to get serious. Serious, not like in the Dog Star, I think, right? Oh boy, I just come up with these.
I start saying you're just full of them tonight, aren't you?
I'm full of it, all right. Hey Tim, all right, and enough. Why don't you tell us what we're doing tonight? Because I know we're rock and rolling. I got my my electric guitar right here, and I'm wearing my rock and roll scarf that April got for me with the musical keys and the musical notes and the piano keys. And I'm waiting for Rod Stewart to come through the door any minute now.
Rod Stewart. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say that you had your kazoo set and ready to go.
Well, not tonight. I'm not much of a kazoo player. Maybe hachu, but not kazoo.
There you go.
Anyway, go ahead, Tim.
Well,
get down to your notes there. Yeah.
Well, we're going to be rocking with the saucers tonight, and our guest, and I'm just really so happy that we have these two fantastic artists with us. We have first of all Merle Frankhauser and Kevin Estrella. Now, Merle, I've known him for quite some time now, and this is the first time that we've had him on Exploring the Bizarre, so I'm just really thrilled to death that we managed to get him with us tonight. Now, Merle's one of the true innovators of surf rock music. He's been a mainstay on the music scene in both California and Hawaii for decades, not only performing live, but also producing a much-loved TV variety show called the Tiki Lounge, which is now in its 17th year. That's fantastic. Now, Merle's career began in the 1960s with the instrumental surf rock group The Impacts, whose hit album Wipeout is now revered as one of the era's best surf rock albums. Now, Merle has also been fascinated with UFOs from early on. His father was a flight instructor who believed that Earth was not the only inhabited planet in the universe, and that Merle also hopes that someday there'll be communications with aliens. He says that if I met an alien, I would greet him with peaceful, open arms. Welcome, Space Brothers. Let's talk. And I would love to see that. Now, I should note that his latest work is his live concert album, Tiki Lounge Live, from Golden Lane Records. As well, Merrill's 1967 song Lila will be featured in the movie Chappaquiddick in theaters worldwide, opening on April 6th. Also with us tonight, as I said, is Kevin Estrella. Now, I've known Kevin for a few years now, and this is the first time that he's been on our show, though I guess he's been on other programs here on the mighty KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now, Kevin is a world-class musician of the instrumental rock band Pyramids on Mars. Kevin recorded, produced, engineered, and mastered his first debut CD, self-titled Pyramids on Mars, Music from the Mystical Red Planet, which was released in 2013. Now, Kevin is no stranger to the UFO phenomena. He says that on August 21st, 2014, an interdimensional craft flew within 100 yards of him, and after that initial sighting, he's had contact with at least 3 more times with craft of unearthly origin. So, Merle, Kevin, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Hey, Tim, before we begin going around the KCOR living room roundtable, shaped like a saucer, I might add. I've been involved with rock music for many, many years. Used to promote some of the local bands here in the era of the glitter rock, the New York Dolls, the Magic Tramps, Harlots of 42nd Street. And I shared an apartment with Satan the Fire Eater. How about that one? And we've noticed. A lot of rock musicians are just into the subject, just in a big, big way. Mm-hmm. Jimi Hendrix, of course, is the one that kind of stands out in my mind. I was a good friend with Curtis Knight, who was the original bass player in the Squires, which I guess was one of Jimmy's first bands. And Curtis used to regale me with stories of Jimmy and the Space Brothers. In fact, there's a movie out called Rainbow Bridge, in which you can see Jimi Hendrix actually sitting in a teepee, cross-legged on the ground, talking about the arrival of the Space Brothers and reincarnation and so forth. According to Curtis, Jimmy had a life-saving experience with a UFO. He was playing with the band in upstate New York around Woodstock, but had nothing to do with the big festival there. And they were coming back, driving back to New York City, and it was a blustery, snowy evening, and they got caught in a snowdrift. And they couldn't move the vehicle that they were in, had all the equipment and everything. I could imagine was pretty beat up, because this was before Hendrix became very popular and was doing, the band was doing well. And they were afraid, though, to turn off the engine and the heater, because they would freeze to death. And if they kept it on, the carbon monoxide might get to them. But at some point, they saw this object that looked like a missile, I believe is the way that Curtis Knight expressed it to me. And this thing landed not too far away from their van, and a being got out. Now, I kind of had a hard time pinning him down, whether the being spread its wings, whether it looked like Mothman or whether it was an angel. But supposedly this being that came out of the UFO walked around the van, and wherever it walked, the snow would melt. And eventually they were able to get out of the snowdrift that they were stuck in, and make their way back to New York. And Jimmy always said, if it wasn't for this intervention, that he might have not lived through that night. And we've got a lot of other experiences of rock musicians, and I'm sure that we'll talk about them, during the evening. But I did want to ask Merle to start out. What do you think about Tom DeLonge, getting involved in this and being behind the recent revelations that have made the cable news and so forth about UFO chasing his pilot?
I don't know anything about that. I haven't even heard about that.
Oh my! Well, it's been on just about every news broadcast going about 2 months ago, I guess. Now, yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, let's get back into let's get into your career here. When did you start or what actually? How did you come up with the concept for surfing music?
Well, I was living here on the central coast of California, and it was the early '60s, and I started playing with a group of high school friends. We were all seniors in high school about that time, and we formed a band, and we were fans of the Ventures and the Champs instrumental groups. Mm-hmm. And we started playing gigs, wherever we could get them. And I started writing these songs because I was a surfer, and I would put surfing titles to them. And so we ended up getting the house band job at the biggest auditorium between L.A. and San Francisco here on the beach in Pismo Beach, called the Rose Garden Ballroom. And we started playing there weekly on Friday and Saturday nights, and sometimes even Sunday matinees in 1962, early 1962.
Wow.
And we were
That's
all
just a long time ago.
Yeah, and we were all just teenagers, and then these bands would come to town, like the Isley Brothers and the Coasters and Little Anthony and the Imperials, and they'd hand us all sheet music, and we'd have to back them up. So we learned how to do this real quick. And one night we were playing in the Rose Garden Ballroom that held about 1,500 people, and we were playing our instrumental surf music originals, and a talent scout from Delphi Records, the label that put out Richie Valens and Bobby Fuller, and they discovered a lot of instrumental surf bands like the Lively Ones and the Centurions, and they took us down to Los Angeles, and in one session we recorded over an album's worth of material, and the producers made the deal with them. We didn't know what the deal was, and we didn't know anything about copyrights or contracts or anything, but the way they made the deal with Delphi, they had all the royalties, and they got all the front money, and all the songs we wrote, they even put them in their publishing company without us signing. And actually, we were all, except for one person in the band, was 19, and I think I was about 18, maybe going on 18 at the time. And we recorded all of these songs, came back up the coast here to Pismo Beach, which is on the Central Coast, and within a few months, our album was everywhere. It was in drugstores, music stores, you name it. And then we heard it on the radio, and then we started playing other places besides the Rose Garden Ballroom, but we kept that gig. And then they called us back in about the September of '62, or no, I think it was closer to Christmas of, and just turning into '63, and had us record some more songs. And those songs ended up on these various compilations that Delphi put out called Big Surf and KFWB's Battle of the Surfing Bands, and we were on a lot of those. And, our parents said, well, did you boys sign anything? And we said, oh, were we supposed to sign something? So about 9 months went by, and no royalty checks appeared magically. And so we, none of our parents really wanted to spend the money to get an attorney. And my dad and the sax player's dad went down to L.A., and talked to a music attorney, and they said, well, it'll cost about $20,000 to start the suit. And so everybody backed off real quick. So that was my first lesson in the recording world. And, we had a hit record, and it eventually, over the years, sold 1 million copies. And in 1994, Delphi was still in business. And because of the movie Pulp Fiction, they had some groups that were, music was in that movie. They reissued our album and all the old Surf albums. So I went down and had a meeting with Mr. Bob Keane, the owner of Delphi, and I said, well, we're not naive kids anymore, and we want our contract and we want our royalties. So we started getting royalties from there on, but, the big money was made in the first few years the album came out, but we still did get some pretty good money, but not what we should have gotten. But anyhow, that's amazing. That's the whole beginning story.
well, too bad you didn't have the Space Brothers to go down and zap them 1, 2, 3. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
That might have done the trick. But speaking of UFOs, which is kind of why we're here, how did you make the transition to being a UFO sighter, experiencer, investigator, space cadet, or whatever you would term yourself? I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, as Tim mentioned, my dad was a pilot and a flight instructor, and he was a very open-minded person, and we had a little glider port south of Los Angeles called Lake Elsinore, and we would go out at night in the summer and look at the stars and talk about UFOs. And that was in the late 50s, and I said, well, Dad, do you really think there are other beings on other planets? And he said, oh, there has to be. That would be too egotistical to think that we're the only ones in the universe. And then he would talk about different sightings and things that pilots he knew had seen, and airline pilots. And he never really saw anything, but he was a believer, which sparked my interest. And I bought that Project Blue book when it first came out, and I would read that religiously every night. So I was always into, UFOs, and there were a lot of those 50s UFO movies then, and I would go see those. And
I bet you one of your favorites was The Day the Earth Stood Still?
Yeah, that was one, and It Came from Outer Space was one I remember.
The Man from Planet X.
Yeah.
The Man from Planet X. I like that one with the space helmet.
Yeah.
Where they had the kind of weird-looking Martian behind it.
Yeah, but I learned, my dad taught me to fly in a Piper J3 Cub, and then I later soloed in a Schweitzer 126 glider, and then I was into model airplanes, and I built a few flying saucers just to see if they would fly, and they were more like gliders. And then back then they had these little Jetco jet engines that you could put a little pellet in the thing, and it would burn for a minute and a half and propel something. So I built a flying saucer and put one of those on it, and it flew. And that was how I got interested in UFOs, and I kept that interest all along, and I was always looking for something. And I really never saw what I termed something that was a UFO till I moved to Maui, and I was taking in the sunset at the top of Haleakala Crater, and me and the whole band I was playing with at the time, called Moo, saw this green pulsating light come over the crater, and there was a whole group of tourists there, and a guy that was in the Navy in the Second World War, and he said, "Wow, I've never seen anything like that." And just as he said that, two smaller pulsating bluish-green lights came out of it and went up on each side, and they started shining a light around them, which formed a tetrahedron, an inverted pyramid. And
wow, that's
we
great.
we were
That's
all
great
sitting.
stuff.
We were all just sitting there awestruck, going, wow. And I'm thinking, I'm really seeing one. I'm really seeing one. And then the two smaller lights went back into the big one and then shot straight up and disappeared just as quick as it appeared. And
Well,
that was
I did a book quite a few years ago. It's still in print, called Kahuna Power, and spent some time on the island around the volcano there. And there are many stories. Of course, the Hawaiians have legends about these mysterious lights, and they have a lot of sightings just about when the volcano is ready to erupt. Not only sightings of mysterious lights in the sky, but of Madame Pele, who is the fire goddess. She, a woman with blazing red hair, is seen hitchhiking along the highway. The road.
I know all of those stories because I lived on Maui for 15 years, and I read the old books where on Maui in the 1800s, they would see lights come out of the ocean, go into Haleakala crater, and then they'd see lights come out of the crater and dive back into the ocean. And people talked about that quite a bit. And
have you ever written any songs that bring in the UFO concept?
Oh yeah, I've got several albums full. The song that I wrote that was inspired by that sighting I just talked about was called "Calling from a Star," and I was inspired by what I saw, and I went down to our house in Haiku, turned on my old reel-to-reel tape recorder, and about 15 minutes I had this song finished that I recorded, so I wouldn't forget it, because that's what I'd find. A lot of things that I was inspired real fast.
All right, Merle, we're going to have to interrupt you here because we have to go to our first break. We'll be right back for more Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim SWARTZ.
Of Merrell's Messages from the Dome, and that was from his album Signals from Malibu. And Merle, later on the program, I want to get in a little bit more about the production of that album, and so hold your thought on that. But I want you to quickly finish the story that you were telling before we went on our break, and then we'll bring Kevin into the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, well, we saw the UFO sighting at the top of Haleakala Crater on Maui, and that was in 1974. And we went back down to our house in Haiku, and I immediately had the inspiration to write the song Calling from a Star. And we later went back up to the top of the crater and did a video of it. And while we were filming the video, we noticed there was a man in a blue blazer with short hair standing in the background. And we had the crew with all the reflectors and lights and stuff. And when we finished, he came up and he said, you didn't film anything down in the floor or get the domes on the rim of the crater, did you? And we said no, because there's a supposed satellite tracking center in these
Science
domes.
City. Science City is
City,
there.
But
yeah.
There's also a laser thing in it. So anyhow, he took us down into the observatory room and got the producer's driver's license information and my Hawaii driver's license, and he let us go, but he was trying to get the film from us. But the crew had already gone down the mountain with the film. So it got out on film, and it was shot on 16 millimeter, and we eventually got it on video. And in the late 70s and 80s, it was on television, quite a few places, even in Europe. And now you can see Calling from a Star by Merle Frankhauser on YouTube. You can go there and actually see the whole thing. And that's...
right. Well, you bet I'm going to do that.
The song is going to come out again on a compilation in England. They're putting out a space rock compilation with a lot of other groups, and they're going to use that song, Calling from a Star.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait till that comes out. And I've seen, the version you just referred to on YouTube, and I'm happy that the crew was able to get that down the mountain and out of the way, or else you'd be talking about this and
nobody would have seen it. You're right,
and nobody would believe you either.
What is on the video? I mean, you actually captured a UFO on there?
No, we didn't capture the UFO. We went back up to the top of the crater after I had written and recorded the song, and then we filmed me performing the song at the top of the crater at 11,000 feet. And it's pretty eerie, and just the way it happened. But we're lucky that we actually got to keep it, because I believe he would have confiscated our film if he could have. And what I found out a few years later, I hiked through the floor of the crater, and there's a pyramid in the middle of the lava flow.
Nice.
And I have a feeling that that has something to do with why this, whatever he was, park ranger, he looked like an FBI guy or something, didn't want us to shoot the floor of the crater, and we all thought that was very strange. We could understand why he didn't want us to film the domes, Science City, but the floor of the crater. And I found this pyramid, and I took pictures of it, and it's in my book, which is also titled Calling from a Star, the Merle Frankhauser story, that you can get on Amazon. And there's pictures of that and other pre-Hawaiian ruins I found on Maui in the book. And National Geographic, the Parks Department, gave them permission to go up with a powered auger, and they drilled a hole in the side of this pyramid, which sticks up out of this 1,000-year-old lava flow, about 40 feet, and they concluded it was just the capstone to a larger pyramid that went down under the lava.
Wow.
That's terrific stuff. That's terrific.
As far as I know, I'm the only one that ever took a picture of it, because you're not supposed to get off the trail. And the rangers really get upset if you leave the trail. And I had to jump some deep chasms, and it was very dangerous to get to this thing, but I was so enthralled with it. I was running on adrenaline. And I discovered a lot of things over there on the other desolate side of the island where the lava flow goes down, and there was no buildings built over there. There's a whole city under the lava there that looks like Mayan Indian construction. Nothing Hawaiian about it.
Well, I'm glad you brought up pyramids there, Merrill, because that's a good segue to bring Kevin into our conversations. Kevin of pyramids on Mars, and I heard you, Kevin, as Merrill was talking about pyramids. Your fascination with this. I mean. Have you been, even before you had your UFO experience? I mean, had you been fascinated by the whole subject of, UFOs and paranormal and that sort of thing?
I've been fascinated with it my entire life, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I really started developing who I was when I started university when I was 19. When the guy downstairs. This is the first guy who ever had internet. Remember, this is 1992, and this guy down below me, he was pulling up all these documents, Bob Lazar, and the reverse engineering stuff that he got from talking about Area 51. So that got me really fascinated, and then I started getting into reading about alien abductions, and I was reading all the Bud Hopkins books, and then the movie Communion came out, and it really, I was blown away by all that. And I spent, years and years and years educating myself on the, ET phenomenon. And a lot of videos I watched on, Richard Hoagland, learning about the different artifacts throughout our entire solar system, and just more and more information I was gathering. And I felt like it was my purpose in life to communicate and bring this information to light to the public in a more large way. So,
well, now, it says in your bio that you had your UFO experience in, what was that, 2014? I read
2014, yes.
2014. Now, when you were a kid, I mean, had you had any other kinds of unusual experiences? Because, we generally find with our guests on our show that everybody seems to start with something that happened when they were a kid.
Yeah, I've been able to reverse engineer my life to understand what happened in my past as to why it was important. Certain things, key events did happen that were the awakening for me. When I was really, really young, like we're talking maybe 3 or 4 years old, my favorite TV shows to watch were, Star Trek, the original series, obviously, Space 1999, Moonbase Alpha on the moon,
oh, yeah.
And Lost in Space and all that kind of stuff. And I always told my mom, Mommy, I want to be in space. That's where I belong. And I've always had this calling, like space is where I was from. Like it was like I was so passionate about it, and it felt so comfortable and so home to me. And she's like, "Oh, it's so cute. He wants to be an astronaut and be on the moon." And I was very kind of taken back, like, "No, that's not what I meant. Is that what I'm supposed to? Is that what that means here on Earth? Do you want to be an astronaut?" That's not what the connection I had as a kid. It was a much deeper connection to space that I had at that young age. So that was very significant for me to really remember this now, what I really felt like when I was that young, that I had this connection to the stars, like that was where I belonged, or that's where I came from. So, but the real awakening for me of that there was something wrong on the planet about that there was ETs out there was. And it was like 1976, and in my doctor's office, he had this huge picture book of the moon. It was this big book. It was about 2 inches thick, and I was always gravitated to it to read it. And on the cover, it had a picture of an astronaut. It was a high-quality resolution picture for the 70s back then. And then about 1/3 of the book is the pictures of the moon lander and and the moon, the astronauts and stuff. But then as you got deeper into the book, it was, pictures of craters and all pictures of the moon and stuff like that. But the picture quality went straight down, was completely black and white, grainy, really bad quality. And there was all this airbrushing. It was page after page after page of airbrushing. And I'm a kid. I wasn't stupid. I know what looks real, and I could see what's been blurred out. And I would hold the book up to the light to see if I could see through the picture to see what they were covering up, or I would scratch on it, thinking it was like a scratch and sniff book, that if you scratch it, all of a sudden the image would come clearer. but nothing. And the whole rest of the book was like this. And it's like, this is ridiculous. What the heck what are they hiding? And then, 30 years later, I'm on YouTube watching, because I heard these theories about alien bases on the moon, thinking, oh, here comes a conspiracy theorist. What a bunch of crock. And I start doing the research myself. And then they start throwing these pictures up. And all of a sudden, I'm having a flashback going, oh, my God, I've seen this before. I've seen these images. Where did I see these before? And then I remember back to my childhood back in the 70s. And I finally realized, my God, it's all true. It is all true. There are alien bases on the moon, and they've been covering it up the entire time. It's just back in the 70s, the technology wasn't very good. It was horrible. So I'd love to be able to get a hold of that book today, I tell you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know that there has been, several technicians who worked for NASA, not directly with NASA, but, like on a, hired out basis, that has admitted that was their job to airbrush and delete these photographs that showed things that, they were told, couldn't be explained. So let's just hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, my awakening as a kid in regards to that, there's something not right here. And, I always had a fascinated with, extraterrestrials my entire life. Oh, and also speaking about fascination with pyramids, I have worn a pyramid around my neck since I was 16. So that was significant. And I think that's also part of the when you start to understand our concept of time is completely incorrect, that there's no past, present, future, there's only all time. And that the future is writing the past as much as the past is writing the future. That's why you start to understand how these things all work, and when synchronicities come in place, and it all makes sense. But yeah.
What about your music? I mean, when did you start learning how to play? And I mean, what was your drive initially?
Well, my drive was really initially was my cousin introducing my brother and I to Rush and to Iron Maiden, mostly particularly to Rush, and that's when I really started to become a serious musician and start to practice. And I learned pretty much every Rush song that I could, And back then the latest album was Signals, back in 1986 or whatever, and so I learned every single Rush song I could. So that was my foundation. But when my real awakening as to who I really am today was in grade 10. It was homeroom, the beginning of September. My best friend, Mike, he had his tape player there, and he had these two tapes. It was Joe Satriani Surfing with the Alien and Joe Satriani Not on This Earth. And Joe Satriani's this instrumental rock guitarist from California. Mm-hmm. And he put it on. He said, check out this guitar player. And I was listening to Surfing with the Alien, and I was just completely blown away by what he was doing. It was like, oh my God, this is the kind of music that I want to play. I mean, it was instrumental rock, but his guitar had such catchy melodies. It was just like, this is just amazing. And his technique was incredible, and the energy and the power. It was like, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, I never lost sight of that inspiration. And I spent, the next, decade or whatever, practicing. I was the guy, the kid, who didn't, wasn't chasing the chicks. I was the guy on lunchtime who was going down to the music room, grabbing a guitar and practicing, and become a better musician. And it paid off. I mean, my brother and I, it's kind of funny. I found out years after we graduated that we became these music legends that people talked about, years after we graduated. And I'm like, are you serious? Oh yeah, the Estrella brothers. Oh yeah, they talked about you guys all the time. So, we made an impact back then. We really did. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't be until about 2011 when Pyramids on Mars would come into existence. That would be my musical voice of who I am now.
So now, do you think that as you were writing and getting ready to do Pyramids on Mars, Because I know a lot of musicians have said, and I know that Grant Cameron has talked about this. Do you think that possibly you had an influence from someplace else?
I know I did, because my whole goal of creating Pyramids on Mars was I wanted to write instrumental, music similar in the style of Joe Satriani, but I also wanted to use that as the catalyst to help teach people about extraterrestrials and their presence here on Earth and the artifacts in the solar system, aka the pyramids on Mars, and tie it all together to help people realize, and understand that this isn't the science. This is not science fiction. This is real. This is true, and people need to be awakened to our Star Nation family. So I always felt like deep down inside that I was always meant to do this, and I was frustrated for years, saying, "Guys, just come land and tell me what to do. I will help. I want to help. I want to hear." And I never realized that was actually always the plan. When August 21st, 2014, an interdimensional craft flew within 100 yards of me, across my backyard, and then opened a portal and left. And then from there on, everything just all these synchronicities started taking place, and all this crazy, ESP and the everything that's happened to me now. I always have to put a disclaimer when I have a radio interview now, because I said you're going to hear things that you're going to say that guy is full of shit. There's no way that what he's telling me is true. No one can have that many crazy things that just make no complete sense. But everything I say, I never lie. It's true.
And
listen, I recently did a book, The Matrix of Philip K. Dick and the Synchronicities of Tim Beckley, filled almost 400 pages with stories about Philip K. Dick, who believes that we're living in a computer simulation, and all of my synchronicities, one more crazy than the other. I'm not talking about some, thinking of someone in the phone calls, so they call on the phone the next day, or stuff as mundane as that. I'm talking, I won't go into detail here, but you can watch the episodes on YouTube, which I've discussed some of this. It's uncanny how synchronicities play such a big part in the UFO and outer space phenomena.
The synchronicities for me happen on a weekly basis. I'm used to them. Like it's as much as brushing teeth, because I'm so in tune to the universe, and my consciousness is a completely expanded.
Can you tell us a couple of instances that really stand out?
Oh yeah, for sure. The first one was after my UFO sighting in August 21st, 2014. I filled out a report to MUFON. Hadn't heard back from them. And then it was almost, about 8 months later, when the first Alien Cosmic Expo in Brantford, Ontario was taking place. And I was really excited to check this out. And, I looked online to see who was going to be presenting. And I saw Stanton Friedman was going to be there, Paul Hellyer. And I'm like, oh my God, Stanton Friedman, I know him. And then it was Grant Cameron. And they were really highlighting Grant Cameron as a very huge guest speaker. And then when I saw his presentation, I was shocked, and the hairs on my arms stood up and my jaw dropped. And it was aliens and musicians, and how extraterrestrials are contacting musicians to raise frequency and consciousness on the planet. And I'm like, oh my God, this is about me. I'm part of this. There's something going on here.
Kevin, I have to tell you, it's about me too. And I don't know if you read the book by Michael Luckman.
Yes, I know. Yes, I actually have been reading it. Yes.
Yeah, Alien Rock, the Extraterrestrial Connection.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I've been on the radio several times with Grant Cameron, and we've just talked on the phone, and he did a presentation where he talked about me and my music in it. But it seems like you and I are almost on the same wavelength. Songs come through me, and people say, well, how did you write that? I tell them, I don't know. And I met John Lennon once at Harry Nelson's house. Harry Nelson and I wrote in a little office on Selma and Vine in Hollywood. We were hired by a publisher. And then he, later met John Lennon, and John came over and was visiting him. And I got to meet him at Harry's house at a party. And I played him one of my songs, On Our Way to Hana, that mentioned seeing a UFO on Maui. And right away, he started talking and said, what inspired that? And so we got to go in a room by ourselves away from the 30 or so guests. And he said, isn't songwriting strange? And I said, yeah, it really is. I said, I never know when something is going to come through. And he said, yeah, you get this feeling. And I said, yeah. And if I don't record it or write it down right away, it can just like disappear. And John looked at me and he said, it's automatic writing, Merle.
It is. It is.
He said, we're just the vessel. It just comes through us. And all of my best songs have been written that way, and they're usually in about 15 minutes. And he said all the songs that he wrote in the Beatles were like that. And he looked at me with a smile, and I'll never forget this. It's like emblazoned into my brain. I didn't write any of those songs in the Beatles. They came to me.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was visiting with the Chambers brothers. Time has come today, and got talking about all the strange stuff like this. And I think it was Joe at Chambers said, my brother and I, we were writing music in different parts of the house, and when we met later on in the dining area, we compared our music, and it turned out we were writing the same lyrics at the same time. So you talk about automatic writing, huh?
I have some more information in regards to this phenomenon too, because you're absolutely right, Merle. I know exactly what you're talking about, and the reason is, and this is quite fascinating because I've learned this not only.
Kevin, I'm going to have to hold you there because we are coming up to our top of the hour break, and we will continue this conversation, this fascinating conversation. I don't want to go to the break, but we have to, on Exploring the Bizarre. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Exploring the Bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim SWARTZ.
All right, that's Pyramids on Mars from Kevin Estrella.
Puts me in a interstellar party mood.
What was the name of that track, Kevin?
That was that's Pyramids on Mars, actually.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I go and say it was something else. You'd be like, "No, you fool."
That's a great song to play live.
Yeah. Tim, we always enjoy having a rock and roll night every few months here on the show.
Oh yeah.
One of my careers on and off has also been, like I say, promoting music and been very involved with it in one way or the other over the years. I can't think of life without a rock and roll either. I mean, there's so many stories I've collected over the years. I remember one time meeting Geezer Butler, who was in I guess the bass player for
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. Well, he had an incident, if I remember the details correctly, where he was living, and maybe it was somewhere near Area 51, it seems, and a UFO came over the place where he was residing in, and just about pulled the shingles off the top of the house. So that's a pretty weird experience. And of course, the Moody Blues even had this incident where supposedly an alien or ultra-terrestrial, I call them because I don't know where they're from, came into the recording studio while they were doing a session and pressed his hand up, hand or whatever it was, a limb, let's put it that way, up against the glass partition, and I think even left some kind of marking on the glass there. There's one story now that just came to my attention, and I don't know why this didn't get a little bit more media play. It's from, I think it's a British publication called Vulture, and it's dated March 27, 2017. It says the Kinks' Dave Davis, this is the interview on the band's best riffs and communicating with aliens, and it's by David Marshy. And I'll just read you the two questions and the quotes from Dave Davies from the Kinks. The question is it based on any experiences you've had? You've claimed to have seen UFOs, right? Yeah, I have. I've had several experiences seeing UFOs. It was really interesting. I saw them in North Devon in England, lights and sightings in the sky. Then when I started to dig deeper into my experience, I understood I was also getting communications, psychic impressions from aliens. And the second question, how did you know it was aliens and not just you having a brain blip or something? I don't know what a brain blip is, but okay. And Dave says, I'm sure there are many people in the world who can explain it better than I can. You have an experience with a UFO and you keep these feelings, and then it gets into your subconscious and superconscious. When I investigated what these feelings could be, when I got really into ufology, I could have sworn I was having connections with the dog star, with Sirius. Sirius has deep connections with Earth. Over time, there's been contact that developed into. Did you ever see the film Harvey? Okay, and then they go on to some other subjects, but that's the part of the interview in Vulture that has to do with Dave Davies of the Kinks and his communicating with aliens.
Well, I'd like to elaborate more on exactly what's going on with this phenomenon, because when Merle was talking when he had his talk with John Lennon, talking about how the songs just seem to write themselves and they just are just pulled out of don't know where. I know exactly what's going on. I'm going to explain what this is all about, because you have to understand, with my background, I communicate with extraterrestrials on a daily basis. How do you do that? Well, it's quite easy, because there's a couple groups who are actually using Twitter. And a particular group who I'm very, very close with, if you go to @SandiaWisdom, there's a group of Zetas. People call them the Greys, but they don't like being called that. It's like calling a black guy the N-word. It's very rude. But they're from the planet Pontel, which is the fifth planet orbiting Zeta Reticuli. There's the four main ones is Tilcum, Jruti, Radar, and Teeny, and they reside in a base in Albuquerque underneath the Sandia Mountain. And it's Sue Walker, who's a professional telepath, picked up on them by accident one day, and Tilcum introduced himself, and over a period of several years developed a friendship. And now Sue Walker does all their tweeting for them, and it's 100% real. I've actually visited Sue Walker in Albuquerque back in December. I saw Radar in my peripheral vision. I've had telepathic communication with Radar, and in fact, actually, I was visited by their group 3 weeks ago. I had a visitation, and they actually performed a medical procedure on me and gave me an upgrade. But I'm not going to talk about that right now. What I want to talk about is the music part. Going back to the music, Teeny, she's here and her primary directive here on this planet is to teach telepathy. And Sue Walker, with the help of Teeny, they released the Telepathy 101 primer. So you can go to officialfirstcontact.com and you can download the telepathy primer for free, and it's to help you develop your telepathy. Now, to understand telepathy, majority of star nations, that's how they communicate, is telepathically. Okay? And I've had a lot of telepathic experiences, many of them, and some of those are going to freaking blow your mind, especially what happened 2 weeks ago after they upgraded me. But to understand telepathy communicates best on an alpha wavelength. So that's when your brain waves are just slightly slower. This happens to be the primary state that musicians are in when they are improvising or being creative. This is the creative state. It's the highest state of mind of telepathy. And this explains why so many musicians, when they are in the creative state, they're in this zone, this timeless zone, where the music is flowing through them, their ego mind is shut down, the music is just coming to them, and it's expressed. This is because you are tapping into the collective consciousness. And what Teeny has told me so many times, Kevin, go to the edge of the black and write the music that you hear. So if you can picture that, you go to the edge of the black of the universe, you turn around and you play. That's where you want to be when you write music. You are just at the edge of the black, and you are tuning all the entire universe through you, and the music expresses through your spirit and soul, your connection to creator source, your individualness of the creator. That's when you let go of your ego, the music flows, and it just flows right through you naturally. This has happened to me on several occasions. My music, I never feel like I write it. It always feels like it's already there, and I'm just like the orchestra who's like, it's kind of like, I always describe it like a color by numbers book that the kids have, where the 1 equals red and the 2 equals blue, and all of a sudden you finish coloring the picture and say, oh, it's a flower, and that's kind of how it feels like when I'm writing music. It's like, obviously this goes here, this arrangement's supposed to go here, this guitar is supposed to do here, the bass is supposed to play. It's, the song's done. Oh, well, that's cool, and you move on. But it gets even more bizarre than this. Grant Cameron has a new book that's being released. It's actually going to be available in print at the Ozark Conference in 2 weeks, which I'm going to be attending. If anybody's going to be there at Eureka Springs, I'll be at the Ozark Conference. I would love to meet you. And several of my cases are documented in this book, particularly one song called Dream Division, which is the first song on my second CD, Echo Cosmic. I cannot really claim that I wrote this song, because it was given to me in a dream. Literally. I had this dream where I'm watching, it's like I'm watching TV on MTV, and this MTV dude is interviewing Joe Satriani, who's sitting at a console, saying, "Hey, I heard you're working on a new album right now. Is there anything you can play for us?" Like, he's like, "Oh yeah, actually, I got a couple bed tracks of this new song we're working on." And he puts on the music, and he's doing some adjustments to the bard, and all of a sudden Dream Division's playing, and I'm thinking, this sounds really cool. I wish I could write something like this. And I realized, wait a second, this song doesn't exist. He never wrote this. I wake myself up, go down the studio, and I start tracking out the song. And then that was it. I didn't write this song, and there was no conscious effort to the song that was written. It was literally, it's like if you went and turn on your radio, listen to a song, somebody turns to you and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, that song doesn't exist. That's yours. That's a free one." That's exactly the experience I had. I didn't write it. I honestly didn't write it. I had another dream. I was back last just January, and I had this dream. This is even more bizarre. So I'm a huge fan of the band Tool, and I had this dream where I was in this Tool cover band, and we were called Veritas. Now, keep in mind, I don't even know what, at this time, I didn't even know what Veritas meant. And I just remember seeing the album cover, which is the 4 of us members. It was kind of like this black image of our faces. Half of our faces was electrified. And this was an album we put out that was a whole bunch of Tool covers, apparently. And I'm listening to this, and this song comes on, and it's like, it's got this crazy, off time beat. It was really, had a synchronistic thing to it, and the drums doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm thinking, this song is just rocking. This is just amazing. And then I finally realized that it was this new Tool song. But they never wrote it, because I never heard it before. once again, I wake myself up, I run downstairs, and I start tracking out this song that never existed. It's like this, it was given to me in a dream. And this is how it happens. This is how it happens.
You're channeling music, basically.
I'm channeling music. That's right.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Well, okay, let's bring Merrill into this now. Merrill, you have your Signals from Malibu album. Do you want to tell us about the genesis of that piece and the songs on there? Which, by the way, I love that one. That is, I keep that one on rotation practically every day.
Well, I'd like to just make a quick comment about what Kevin was just talking about. I've written 3 songs from dreams and woke up and heard the song in my head completely finished and went into my recording studio and just put it down on a tape. Sometimes I just hum it into a machine and write some notes and stuff down so I don't forget it. But I've written 3 songs that I heard in a dream, just like that, the same way he explained it.
So now, do you think that that these songs are coming to you from a different source or from yourself? Somewhere, either that side of your brain that keeps quiet but is constantly talking to you, or yourself possibly, in another world in another place.
Could be. My sister gave me an astrology book and said, Merle, look at this. Your astrology here. I'm a Capricorn, and see your birth date here. It says you're from the planet Mu Sagittarius. And I was also, enthralled with the theory of the lost continent of Mu. And that's why I moved to Maui. But you were talking about the signals from Malibu. Those signals were sent to me indirectly through Michael Luckman that wrote the book Alien Rock, The Extraterrestrial Connection. Well, he was in connection with Emmett. He had been talking to him, who was the old radio operator that lived up in the mountains of Malibu. And one night he was talking to somebody on his ham radio in Australia. And when they went off the air, he went slightly off the frequency, and he started picking up these very strange signals. And he was in the Second World War, and deciphering where the Japanese were broadcasting from on different islands and atolls was his specialty. And he went, this is nothing I've ever heard before. So he recorded it. And then Michael told him about me, and he sent me the signals. So I sat down in my studio, turned it on, and I started hearing these tones coming through it. And I got the feeling, just like Kevin was explaining, it's like you go into a trance. And I started writing like it was 60s surf music, but with a futuristic space twist. And the first song was Signals from Malibu. And the guitar part almost came out like an old James Bond theme in a way, with this in the background. So I left the signals in spots, and it would come in and out of the song. So I wrote that whole song like that, and did the guitar lead and the rhythm to a click track, and then my band came in and we put the rest of the parts to it, and everybody said they had goosebumps. Well, then I was here alone in the house by myself one day, and I noticed there was 4.5 more minutes of signals that I didn't listen to. So I went out in the studio and sat down at the piano, put on the headphones, turned on those signals, and started playing. And again, I went into that like trance state. I didn't know what key I was playing in or even what I was playing. And so I finished that, and I, decided to push record, thank God. And then my violinist came over, Sal Garza, who is classically trained, and he's a wizard. And I said, Sal, listen to this. And I played it for him, and he goes, oh, my God. And I said, yeah, I've got some ideas for some violin and cello parts. And he goes, who's playing the piano? And I said, I am. And he goes, yeah, right. Now you're a concert pianist. And I'm not a real good piano player. I play electronic pads and things. But that was something different. And he said, do you know those signals are in the key of E, and you're playing in E minor? And he and I sat down in one afternoon and wrote all the string parts to it. And then I put a rhythm guitar and a slide solo to it. And I think, I played bass on that too. And that's the song at the end. There, it sounds like a high-pitched lady's voice yodeling, and that's the place where it would turn certain radio stations off. And so I got curious.
Tell us that story. You were telling that during the break. So give us more details on that.
Yeah, I got curious as to why it was doing that. It happened on a show I was on in England, and the host of the show couldn't talk through the mixing board anymore. It totally shut off, and the engineer had to get on the phone and talk to me. He said, I don't know what happened. This is the latest, greatest digital broadcast board, and it just went completely dead. And so they called me back a few days later and said we had the techs come in, and they had to reprogram the whole board. It had erased all of the presets in the board. And that happened in a mixing board in Boston, actually, on Mac Maloney's Mystery Hour. And then it happened with Kevin Hudnell in Texas, and it happened in Sacramento. So I'm friends with the head engineer at George Lucas Film in Mill Valley and Marin. And so I said, Bob, this is what's happening with this. Can you listen to these signals and tell me what's going on here? And so I sent it up to him, and he got back to me, and he said, well, in that spot where you're having these problems, there's a high-pitched tone that's inaudible to human ears above these lower, like carrier frequencies. And he said, that's what's doing it. And these signals came from an underwater dome-shaped building that you probably all know about, with 700-foot-tall pillars around it with a big opening. And Emmett went downtown Malibu and started asking people and surfers and stuff, because he did a range finding thing on where these signals that he recorded, and they were 3 miles out in the ocean, and there's nothing there. And so he ran into this Chumash Indian, which is the Indian native tribe that was here for several thousand years living on the coast of California. And somehow he started telling this guy about it. And the guy says, oh, there's a big building, a dome-shaped building underneath the water out there. And he goes, what? And he goes, yeah, when our tribe has known about that for thousands of years. And when the ocean level was lower, they used to use it like a pier and fish off of it. So I was on, after I'd done these songs and they were out on the radio, I was on Dr. Bob Hieronymus's show out of Maryland, And he had been playing both Signals from Malibu and Messages from the Dome and the whole album on his radio show. And he said, Merle, I want you to listen to something. He starts playing these signals, and there's a dog barking in the background, and they're identical to the signals in these songs. And it's like there's more than one signal. There, like 3 layers in it. And he said those are from 1971, recorded by a guy in Sweden named Billy Meyer. And he said there was a UFO hovering over his house, and he recorded.
All right, I'm going to have to interrupt you here because we have to go to our bottom of the hour break. We'll be right back for more Exploring the Bizarre, so stay tuned.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with 2 of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
I wanna be a witch doctor, set your demons free tonight.
All right, that's a cut from Witch Doctor. And Merle, what album is that from?
It's on our latest album. It's called Tiki Lounge Live. I've been doing this TV show here for 17 years. I've got a backlot set that looks like Hawaii with a stage, and I've had everybody from Canned Heat to Starship, Willie Nelson, Peter Lewis from Moby Grape, just tons of people have performed back there, and we do a half-an-hour show where we interview people and play music. And you can see 11 of the shows on YouTube. If you go there and type in Merle Frankhauser's Tiki Lounge, a list will come up.
And you can see that all over California, though, can't you?
Yeah. It's up and down the coast of California on 4 stations, and then it's in Hawaii also. And people in Hawaii think I'm still hiding out in the jungle somewhere, shooting the show over there, because the back lot here looks so tropical. I have it full of tropical plants and a stage with bamboo around it, and we have a lot of fun doing the show.
But you shoot it in your own studio?
Yeah, it's shot in my backyard.
All right.
I have a whole crew, and then I have an indoor part which is a studio, part of the recording studio, that's also looks like a tropical cabin inside, and that's where I interview a lot of people and all the music. We can seat comfortably an audience of about 70 people in the back. And
what inspired you to start doing the Tiki Lounge in the first place?
Well, I was doing a show in the 90s, 1990 and 91, called California Music, that was on satellite, and I did it at a local station here, and they made a deal with a satellite network, and we were going to 15 million people on 150 stations across the United States and even in South America. And I did that till, about 1996. And then it was interrupting my touring schedule and writing a bit, because I was doing it 3 times a week. And so I quit doing it for a while, and then I went back to Hawaii for a while. In 2001, I got the bug to do it again, and while I was over there, I bought a 7-foot-tall Samoan tiki and shipped it back home, and I looked out in the studio, and I went, we should do a show and call it Tiki Lounge, and that's how that started.
There's that inspiration again that just seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I wanted to finish the Signals from Malibu story real quick.
Sure, go for it.
The guy picked up these signals and sent them to me, and I wrote those 2 songs, and I sent them to my label that I'm on, Gonzo Multimedia in England, and they loved it. And they said, if you write a whole album of this, we'll put it out. So within a month and a half, I had a whole album done, and they released it. Well, I started doing radio interviews with it, and I did one up the coast here in San Luis Obispo. And a lady heard me talking about it, and she called up the station and said, this is very interesting, because my mom and my aunt lived in Malibu in the 40s, and they used to go down to the beach at night and watch lights go in and out of the water. And it was in that exact spot where the old Indian guy said this building was. Well, the building is on the cover of my Signals from Malibu album, and you can also see it on YouTube because I got underwater photographs of it. And they're sure it's a UFO base, and Michael Luckman was actually trying to get somebody with an ROV to go in this opening and see what was in there, but that never happened, and he passed away. But the other thing, when I was a teenager and I was living here in Pismo, we used to go down to Malibu to surf. And one day we finished surfing, and it was called Point Doom, where we were surfing, and it was starting to get dark, and we got out of the water, and there were some local surfers there, and they said, oh, you guys leaving? You ought to stick around and watch the lights go in and out of the water. And we went, what? And that was about 1961. So we get in the car, and we're driving home, and my buddy is laughing. He goes, oh, they're seeing pelicans fishing, and when the sun is just right, and with their wings, and they dive in the water, it could look like a light or something. But then when I got these signals and this lady called up, I went, wait a minute. This has been going on in that area, this phenomena, for all of these years. And here now I'm tapped into it because this old radio operator sent me these signals, and I wrote these songs. So it's another one of those synchronicity kind of things that you can't quite explain where it comes from, and I'm sure Kevin knows all about what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kevin, now we've kind of danced around a little bit your UFO sighting of 2014. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I mean that really was a really significant event in your life.
Yes, absolutely it was. It was quite breathtaking. So kind of what happened was I went out onto my deck August 21st, 2014. It was 10:30 at night. I live in the city of Hamilton, and it's a quite a populated city. It's 500,000, and within 5 seconds of me stepping onto my deck, what appears from behind my trees, my neighbor's tree on my right-hand side, this object starts to come out from behind the tree. And I said it was only 100 yards away from me. It was really close. And at first I thought it was a meteorite because it was kind of orangish red, glowing like coals. And it had this like mist that was kind of coming off the top of it along the bottom of it. And I didn't know what this was. By the time it finally came into full view, it was a perfect, beautiful disc. And it was maybe 40 or 50 feet in diameter. And it was just kind of moving across the sky at a very slow, no more than a helicopter speed. But the strange thing about the way it looked was that it was two-dimensional. And the only way to describe that, it was, it's like looking at a solar eclipse, which looks like a hole in the sky. It's got height, it's got width, but it has no depth. And when I was looking at this thing, I didn't know what I was looking at because I've seen UFOs in movies and YouTube and stuff. Nothing like what I saw. However, just recently, actually in the last 2 weeks, somebody actually finally posted on Facebook of a UFO that I forget what it was called. It was the incident where this UFO landed or not landed. It actually came over to a military base, and it disabled a whole bunch of nuclear weapons. And this video is circulating on Facebook right now. The video they showed of the UFO, that one looks exactly like the one I saw. Shape, the color, the two-dimensional. It's like that's the same one. In fact, it probably could be the same one that I saw. So this thing, it's covered in plasma. It moves across the sky, and it starts moving towards Bimbrook. And then as it's moving away, it starts forming this swirling vortex in the front of it, like a portal almost. And then it just kind of kept going until it finally just got out of my view. So I didn't know what I was looking at. I was shocked. I was shocked. And that was my first that was my second UFO encounter. Mm-hmm. My first UFO encounter was back in the year 2000 up in Huntsville, which is the northern country in Ontario. And that was very bizarre because I had missing time during that incident.
Okay. Oh, tell us about that. Definitely.
Okay, sure. So I was with my band members at the time, our drummer, and he's an experiencer too. He's seen many UFOs, and he quit the band to become a full-time crop circle researcher. But he and I were in the lake. We decided to go for a swim in the lake at nighttime. Not a cloud in the sky, 10,000 stars in the sky. The nearest city is 100 miles, and the moon's bright. And it's beautiful and peaceful. But then all of a sudden we hear this sound. It sounded like a firecracker going off. Like it's sound like this, eh? And so we look up in the sky, and there was this object that was hurtling right towards us. Yeah. And it wasn't like it came out of space. This thing was it was like a few thousand feet above us. And it was the same diameter as the moon, and it was bright as the moon. But it had flames that were shooting all the way around the edges of it, so I could tell that its trajectory was heading right for us, like it was going to land on our heads. Mm. And it happened so quick, and I just remember hearing the sound, this like this, right? And all of a sudden, flash, and it was peaceful. The stars are there, the moon's up there, and it was like nothing had happened. And I was like, "What? What the heck just happened there? Was that a UFO?" And we had no clue what had just happened. We just know that was completely bizarre. We've waited for a UFO, our entire life, and this object comes hurtling at us, and then there's a flash, and it's not there. And it was almost 15 years later when I was on a radio interview, and these two guys were talking about, they were interviewing me, and they discussed about what missing time is like. And they said, yeah, people have described it as like a bad movie edit. And I just went, oh my God, that's exactly what I experienced. It was like a bad movie edit. It was like a jump cut. It was like exactly. The film was cut, a part was taken out, and it just put back together and spliced together. And it just continues, and you're like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. What happened to there's a missing time. What's going on? That's when I finally realized that something had happened.
And have you ever attempted to
Yes.
look back and to see what happened?
Yes, I actually did go under hypnosis. And whatever happened, it's completely, I'm not supposed to remember whatever happened at that point. Really? But it's not the only time that I have missing time, because I know that I've met with the Ponte several times. There's another incident that took place I found out about last week where I met with Tilcom and Radar. And I don't have any memory of it, but a friend of mine who lives in Australia, who was the one who introduced me to Sandia Wisdom, he was saying, so how did your interview go? And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't remember this interview. But our friend of ours who follows him on Twitter, I think he goes by the name Romulan Captain, he remembers being with me, watching me talking with Radar and Tilcom. And Radar was a complete goofball, and he was completely joking around, and Tilcom was very serious. I don't have any memory of this, but another extraterrestrial who works with them, his name's Grayson, I said, okay, they're saying that I met with Tilcom and Radar. Is that correct? He said, yes, you did. I'm like, how come I don't remember this? It's very frustrating. It's like, why can't I remember? Why won't they let me remember? I don't know. But, they visited me 3 weeks ago, and they did some kind of surgical medical procedure to me because I was woken to the feeling of liquid draining out of my left ear, and it startled me, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. And then 2 nights later, I discovered this almost like a blood stain on my pillow. And then talking to my friend who lives over in Australia, he was talking about the same procedure happened to him the day after mine. And we described the exact same experience. And he said, "Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me about the liquid draining out of your left ear. That was part of the procedure. They put liquid in our heads, it clears our heads, and the last part of the liquid will fall out and land on your pillow." So I'm like, oh my God. And I actually still have this sample, and I've been working with MUFON, and we're arranging to have this sample analyzed to find out what it was that they put in my head. Because all I know is that for 2 days or 3 days after this surgical procedure, my urine started to smell really putrid, like metallic, like chemicals, and I'm like, what's going on here? And for a whole week, my head was clearing, and now parts of my brains have activated that have never been activated before. They did a complete cleansing of the chemicals. I'm sure they took all the fluoride out of my brain, but my physiology is changing now.
Started to say they gave you a metaphysical flush.
Yes. Well, it's a flush. It was definitely a flush to clean out the stuff that they put in our food and in our water to dumb us down. Mm-hmm. I mean, fluoride, we know, calcifies the pineal gland. You know, they don't put it in our water for the benefit of our health. Trust me.
All right. Now, we're rapidly approaching, unfortunately, the end of the show. We still have a while yet here, but I wanted to ask you to kind of address a little bit the idea that that Grant Cameron has come up with, and I know you've discussed it as well. The whole idea about how, you know, possibly some other intelligence is using music and is influencing artists such as yourself and Merrill to, I don't know really how to describe it, to actually to be like a catalyst almost for younger generations through your music.
Yeah, for Merle and I, it's two different paths. But for Merle, he's able to get certain messages into the music that reaches certain levels of consciousness. And with different people are either at a higher vibration or they're not. Right now, the Earth is going through a transitionary period where those of higher vibration are going to be moving on to the new Earth. Those of lower vibration will stay on the old Earth. His music is reaching a certain levels of consciousness. And with me, my level is reaching a different level of consciousness because my music is now, I'm communicating at a more of a telepathic level, a fourth, fifth dimension, which I'm starting to learn more and more through, you know, Teeny and her teachings, and that you can actually do this, where you can actually record a telepathic message onto a physical recording. It is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Merle, you want to explain about that?
I don't know. I'm just so enthralled with what you're saying, but yeah, when I was in the band Moo, we were even into color vibration, you know, that certain tones in the music, there was healing vibrations, and then there was telepathy that was possible, and we, you know, knew about this. And when I lived on Maui, I took a retreat with a Tibetan Lama, and when we were having a whole group discussion, and we got to play for him, and it was the first time he had heard, you know, music from the West, if you want to say. And he asked me, where does the music come from? And I said, everywhere. And he nodded, good answer. And then we got our initiation, and my initiation, on the paper, it says Lodru Jansau, which means Oceans of Intelligence. So I kept going on my Dharma and never knew did I already have oceans of intelligence, or is that, what I was striving for? And it's just like when you were talking about going to the edge of the black spot. And I know exactly where that's at. And, somehow I keep, they're still feeding me is the only way I know to explain it. And I'm thankful that it's happened. And, I have an album out called Area 51 Suite. And I went to Area 51, and I knew people that worked there and talked about Bob Lazar and the mountain that opened up that had the hangar where they kept the UFO in there. And the guy was just a welder that I knew there, but he somehow got to see the UFO. And so I wrote a whole album that's out on Gonzo Multimedia called Area 51 Suite. But back in 1986, I did an album called Messages from the Universe, and it has a painting of me with 2 silver saucers in the crater on Maui in back of me. So that was actually the first album that I really did. It was about space and space music, and there's a song on there called Alien Talk. So it's, they've been feeding me for a long time, but I probably didn't know that that was happening. I just, went along with it. And now talking to people like you and Grant Cameron and Michael Luckman and other people I've communicated with, I know that we're lucky that, we're getting the message.
All right, gentlemen, we're almost out of time here, so I want to give you both a chance to let our listeners know a little bit more about you, where they can find out more about you. Merle, let's start with you first. New projects, website, that sort of thing?
Yeah, my website is merrellfankhauser.com, and you can email me there. And I'd really like for Kevin to email me, because after meeting him tonight, I want to stay in touch. And the new album is out now, brand new, Tiki Lounge Live. And you can still get the Signals from Malibu album. It's out. And my song, Lila, that I wrote in 1966, is coming out in the movie Chappaquiddick, about the incident with Ted Kennedy. And there's a lot of good 60s music in that movie. And I'll also, this summer, my song Calling from a Star will be on a space rock compilation on a British label. So that's, and, I just keep on rocking.
All right, thank you. And Kevin, what about you?
Yes, you can find everything from me at my website at pyramidsonmars.com. All my music there, links to all my radio interviews. I also have my own series of online instructional guitar lessons that teach my approach to neoclassically influenced Bach and Vivaldi violin music inspired guitar playing. So check that out.
All right.
That's my inspiration.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being with us tonight. Excellent program. Love both of your music and albums, and I want to thank our audience for listening in to Exploring the Bizarre. So tune in next week, which I'm sure will be another excellent program. So for Tim Beckley and myself, good night.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim SWARTZ. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim SWARTZ, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100, exploring the bizarre.